So welcome everybody. We're going to start the session here. For those that may not know me, my name is Bill Bitner, formerly of IBM. Now I'm on my own. But we thought we would still do this session. The session's a bit talks with friends. Yes, they're all my friends, at least today. We'll see how this session goes.
Today.
I have a first aid kit.
Keep it handy. We've done this a session a few times now, and some people have asked me, well, are you going to keep doing the history stuff? And well, we did talk about this being the 60th anniversary of the mainframe. Now, history, I'm not big on it just for the sake of history, but I think it's important. I think it's important to look at what we've done, what we've accomplished, what we've learned in that process. I also think that in ways, a good approximation of what's possible in the future is looking at what has been accomplished in the past. And so with that, I have three of my friends up here that have agreed to have this little chat with us. There's no real prepared questions. I gave them a couple hints, but I didn't give them the real questions. I might have given you some questions that just to fake you out. I don't know.
I didn't read that part.
So we'll go along here. First, we'll start with.
Do you read this? He doesn't read your emails.
They went in my spam folder.
This is spam folder, especially the bit spam folder. I even try to trick them. I send them from other domains now. But so I'll let each of you introduce yourselves just in terms of who you are and what you're doing today. So a little reminder, we only have 60 minutes for this session. So keep.
Why are you looking at me?
You know exactly why I'm looking at you. So we'll start with Len, if you want to introduce yourself and what you're doing today.
Len Santalucia, and I am the CTO of the mainframe practice at Converged Technologies. Formerly, we were known as Vicom Infinity. Now we're called Vicom Infinity, a Converged company, but that name's going to go away. It will just be plain Converged.
Great, thanks, Len. That was good.
See?
So just to introduce ourselves and where we are now.
Yeah.
Acoustics are not very good, just saying.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about it.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
You
My
asked
name's
for it.
Barton Robinson, for those of you that are not my customers, which is very few of you. I run Velocity Software, which I'm CTO and founder of Velocity Software. And that's been happening since 1988. So, and I will tell you that I have drank beer on his birthday in Munich multiple times with Mr. Bill.
This is true.
Neale Ferguson, Senior Nominee Associates, been doing VM since '81. We were one of Barton's earliest customers back in Australia. After 20 years in Virginia, I'm back in Australia and visiting family, so I coincided with the VM workshop. Still doing VM.
Nice. This is a very diverse panel I have up here in terms of, Australian, a Canadian,
They walk into a bar
Whatever.
and they never
Never
leave.
good bar. All right. So now let's go way back. How did you get introduced to the mainframe? What was your first kind of experience with it? We'll start with you again, Len. You're on the clock.
All right, so some of you might know that I happen to have a grandfather and father that were IBMers, and we were born and raised in Endicott, and they took me to the announcement of the mainframe. I was 10 and a half years old at that time in 1964, and I don't know if that was my destination or, my determining my life, but that's where I first got introduced by it, and then I went to Binghamton University, all there again in Endicott area, and took some mainframe courses, and before I knew it, I was hired by IBM.
Nice. And you, Barton?
In 1975, I had an interview with a guy named Earl Ness to work in the San Francisco IBM data center. I showed up in my work clothes. I was working at a recycling center, so you can imagine what my work clothes were. He hired me anyway. So that was the IBM data center where they were testing out DOS VS, so they were doing actually power development. One of the ladies was. They were doing VS1. We had a 115, a 125, a 135, a 138, a 155, and a 165, I think. But I got to play with all kinds of toys. And that job went to, I became basically a supervisor of the data center for testing. and I got to play with lots of cool stuff. So and that's how I started.
Nice.
So-
And you, Neil?
Two-parter, still at high school, I was 15 and I'd started up the school's basketball program and we were looking for uniforms. And the sports master pointed me to the sports shed and there happened to be 2 boxes of IBM manuals in there, 360 assembler, PL1 and COBOL. So I pinched them and taught myself assembler. Never got to use it until 1981 when I started at an off-track betting organization who ran IBM and running it on a thinnest of budgets. So they paid me to do my degree as well as working there, and I got to play with VM. And as Barton says, there were a lot of toys, but we had to do some unique stuff, and that's just kept me going for 41 years now. 42 years. No, 43. God, I'm old.
Nice.
You're not as old as Len.
Well, nobody's old as Len.
So, Barton, I think you reminded me of a story when you were talking there. Was it you that, in one of your early tenures with that work, you started going through the manual and trying all the commands?
I did.
Did you hit like all of them?
I even tried out that shutdown thing because I really wasn't sure what it meant.
And you learned, didn't you?
And it worked. So,
Nice.
and no one got mad at me. They might have been a little pissed.
They forgave you. It was a learning experience.
People doing benchmarks were a little upset. Yeah.
It reminds me when I started playing with CMS for the first time, I was going through the help screens and all the commands. I typed in SVC dump, SVC trace or SV dump, SVC trace, and wondered what it did, and just gave me back the ready prompt, so I forgot about it. And an hour or two later, I got a call from the manager saying the computer room's called, you've gone through a box and a half for a printout.
Oops. So, unfortunately, we don't have time to go through each of your history from soup to nuts, from day one to that. But is there an accomplishment or some point in your life that you're most proud of from your career in the mainframe? I'll give you a few seconds. I'll stall for 5 seconds, and then one of you, I'll be looking to. This is a great looking audience out here. Anything come to mind, anyone? Barton?
All right, you go ahead.
So when I joined the branch in 1977, my branch manager was creating a presentation for the CEO of IBM because IBM was not investing in VM, and Andal was eating our lunch. And he saved VM. I mean, he got IBM to invest in it. How many of you know the Susan Puglia story? So
I've got a trash bag. Yeah.
a few of them.
I know those guys.
There was a lady who was put in charge, and I get all these calls from IBMers, you know, it's like, no, you didn't hear it from me, but. She was put in charge of shutting down the VM lab. And I sort of knew about it, and I finally asked her a question in a closed meeting, which got me in trouble. And she said, yes, she's gonna shut it down. And I verbatim, I put that on the listserv within 30 minutes. Think what that did to all of the companies that have invested in VM, like today, if we say we're shutting down VM, what would all the banks say today? Would you think they'd be a little pissed off?
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, I think, well, I saved VM again, but I'm still working on it. So I got more on that, but okay. Anyway, they took away my ribbon, so because they got all pissed off at me, and it was the best thing they ever did because I didn't have to work so hard at Share.
So it was a win-win,
It was a win-win.
except for me.
So that is the Susan story.
Nice. Len?
Well, you know, you remember when, in the 2000 timeframe, when we started getting involved with Linux?
Right.
You know, it was the Linux across all the server family, the E server family, including the Z. Well, I was on this Linux Impact team, and it was XP and Z, which I was responsible for on the sales side, on the Wall Street side of things. And I met one day with I think it was Morgan Stanley, and they started talking about how they could virtualize with Linux on other platforms. And I said, well, you know, you can run Linux on the mainframe under ZVM. Oh, Len, but ZVM is like the expense of, you know, buying ZOS. And I said, well, what if we were able to change that and make it priced differently like in the distributed world. And they said, well, we might consider it. So I went back, I think it was up through you guys, up in the lab. And I didn't know you were working on this already, but it's helped you validate that, you know, the pricing, the way ZVM is priced today
Right.
with the first three, the next three, and the next three, gets less, more, it's you're incented to buy more VM. And I brought that back to them, and it started spreading across all of the Wall Street customers at that time, and they started doing POCs, some actually put it in, and so I felt kind of nice that I was able to help with spreading the word and save VM like you.
Mhm.
Nice.
And yes, we have IFLs.
Yes, I sold a bunch of IFLs.
Cool.
It was nice.
That was a good year.
It was.
Neil, something come to mind for you?
Couple of things, of course, Linux. We were doing a public port of Linux called Bigfoot, and then discovering that IBM was doing it and making real progress, and then understanding that internal politics in IBM may cause its death any time, and then being able to publish what we were doing, hopefully prompting IBM to think, well, we better get this going. And then December 28th, getting the patches and building a Linux system the next day and running it, seeing it operating was a thrill. And then a failed project, but a lot of fun, was Open Solaris on Z. Nothing quite like writing an operating system from the scratch to keep you entertained. At least Oracle and IBM paid it for it, so
Right.
it wasn't a complete waste.
Cool. So each of you, at least today, are very different in terms of Len, very sales oriented, solutions there. Barton, just troublemaking in general, but performance and other solutions from that. And Neil, you very much a coder and a problem solver from that perspective. Would you each talk a little bit about your?
And I leverage both these guys, you know, a lot.
Raise your hand if you haven't been leveraged by Len Santalucia. We might edit that out.
No, it's, I don't mind.
Could you each talk a little bit about how you learn about technology? Was it finding a box of books and when you were looking for uniforms over the years, and whether that's changed at all?
Well, go ahead, Neil, why don't you go?
Well, it's always been my way of finding a book, getting absorbed in it. Started off with the Radio Shack TRS-80, and the girls' school across the creek from us won one and didn't know how to use it, so I went over there and did it, and then I found the books for IBM, and from IBM books, and just discovery, things that piqued my interests. Things worked out, or they didn't work out. It was fun either way.
Right.
Made some money along the way for the companies I was working with, so they kept me employed.
Nice. And Barton, besides like shutting down systems, was there other?
So I think I was the first one that ever hacked into Berkeley Unix. Because the reason I can say that is Berkeley Unix came to Berkeley while I was there, and the professor was my professor, so Ken Thompson. And a guy by the name of Bill Joy, I think is his name. So I stole computer time. I hacked him because I had this linear algebra, and the homework was taking a long time. I managed to steal an account. I wrote a little program, so my linear algebra was taking like 10 minutes instead of 3 hours. And I get this thing, like a line text thing, from Bill Joy, who founded Sun, by the way. It was, who are you, and when are you going to be done using my computer? And that's what got me interested in performance, because how did he know who I was? He didn't, but, and he never figured it out, because I logged off really quick. So,
Nice. Len, how about you?
Well, I learned a lot because, sales is kind of a very quota-driven type of thing, but I always liked to talk about technology and sell technology. And I didn't have the time that I really should have spent in learning the technology more in depth. But when I knew, I wasn't kidding when I leverage you, leverage all the people here all the time. And I took advantage of that, but I always tried to pay back with some way I could pay back to somebody for doing and helping me. And so I learned it by, lack of a better word, osmosis most of the time. and applying myself with a customer and learning what they liked, what they didn't like, and it worked for me because I just didn't always have the time to be hands-on. I was in the lab when I used to work up in Endicott,
Right.
but, you know, I knew that wasn't my calling. I knew I always was more customer after you know, customer-facing type person after getting involved with the briefing center in Endicott Briefing Center. I got called over there sometimes to talk, and then I got called down to Poughkeepsie, and then sometimes down to the city, talking to Wall Street customers. The more I did that, I said, it was very nice to have 1 foot in the lab and 1 foot in the field. And I kind of still feel I still have a lot of that because everybody's so nice to me and helping me to this very day. Everybody's still back there, and I always bug this guy, I always bug that guy over there. And, you know, David Marguerite's husband came with me a few times to places like Morgan Stanley, and that helped a lot. They knew that I could get the right people, and I would follow up on things for them that the technical people normally wouldn't necessarily be able to do or could do. And it built a nice thing. That's how I kind of did it.
Yeah. I think of you because one of the things I sometimes tell some of the newer folks is create a diagram of how the system's all put together, the different components, and now place people in each of those components. Who do you reach out to that knows, you know, IOGens or compilers or whatever? And I don't know that you thought about it that way, but
No,
that's what
I
you
kind
do.
of did. I could point to everybody almost in this audience. Even Lauren, you know, you're right. And Tracy, God, you know I bug you with your West Coast time, and I'm calling you in the early morning hours. I've called even Joe and Ray, even though they're not wearing IBMers, but I used to call them for things and advice and help and stuff. You know, it's just Eric, JW, Tommy, everybody.
Has caller ID affected this approach?
No,
No, because we all love you.
no, not at all. And I have everybody's phone number, and I see who's calling me all the time because I have everybody else's phone number. It's just been great, and it still is great.
So a question now for Neale. This is a unique one. I've wanted to get to the root of this for a long time now.
Uh-oh.
You're very much a languages person, including like Australian. So years and years ago, I heard you talking about a product. I can't remember what the product was. And it was with Reed Mullen. And you called the product, I think, the dog's breakfast. And I go to Reed, that's good, right? Because like dogs, when they get up in the morning, like they love their breakfast and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And Reed's like, I don't think so, Bill. So please, can you settle the debate?
It's a derogatory term.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm afraid. Dogs will eat anything, including their own, you know. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I'm glad I can't remember the product now.
Probably something from Tivoli.
I'll edit that. But speaking about languages, you've coded in how many different ones? Have you lost count? Or
Lots of them. I don't know how many terribly
Yeah.
well, but yeah.
Okay.
No, but
is there one that you gravitate to? Like when you're given a new project, do you say, boy, I sure hope I can write it in?
no, I horses for courses. I like Python. I love Rex. I love PL1. I'm disappointed that PLX is not an option anymore, that type of stuff. And if I get my hands on it, it's assembler.
Right.
There's a primal need satisfied by doing assembler.
There's something different about that. Yep. And Barton, I know you're like PL1. Are you excited about anything else?
Every language has a purpose. Find the right language for the right job. I mean, there's some things pipes are really good at. It's not a programming language, I'm sorry. Well, some things Rex is good at. You know what? It's not fast. If you have to do something a lot, do an assembler or PL1. So, I'm sorry, Python?
Believe it or not, I used to look at those Merkelfish cards when I worked at level 2 and was reading this assembler and PL1. I kind of knew what it was saying, but not all the time.
Python just has such a library of stuff that you don't have to edit. You go to Stack Overflow and you ask it, or you know you can go to Gemini and say, I've got this API, I needed to do this, how do I do it? Gemini comes back with this code fragment, you cut and paste, and it works. I can't do that with the other languages.
So I mentioned earlier on that I talked about looking back helps us project what's possible in the future. So what do each of you think the ZVM platform and Linux on ZNZ look like in 15 years? No, you didn't expect this one, did you?
Is IBM going to support it for 15 more years?
I'm the one asking the questions here.
That's good, Bill.
There's a lot
Wait
of,
so long to say that.
there's a lot of support that seems to have disappeared.
Okay.
So I was just at the university one. So all the universities used to have VM, right? Because they got the processors for a very low cost. And a guy by the name of Lou Gerstner killed that program.
And the software consortium that saved a bucket on money.
So what happened next? Well, he also pulled Office Vision. And what happened next? Well, Microsoft took off because Microsoft went to the universities and Microsoft Exchange exploded because we gave up Office Vision. So we can put that all on one guy. So now, is IBM going to continue this process of we're going to take away? And in 15 years?
Let's put on our optimistic hat for a
I
moment.
think it's going to be Linux on Velocity.
Okay. You've heard it here, Velocity's buying everything.
Love. It's called love.
LOV. I saw that model. Was Kurt sent it to me or something?
Yeah, he's presenting love in the other room.
Oh, okay.
15 years seems like a long time, but it goes in a blink. When we think that Linux and Z's now 25 years,
Yep.
I mean, that's just obscene, absurd. And compared to when I started, 1999, 25 years before that, I was still, I think it was in 6th grade. But now it's 25 years after. Things have improved, things have not improved. I mean, we've lost a lot of opportunities. IBM's lost a lot of opportunities that they could have otherwise taken for various dumb or maybe smarter reasons than I can think of. So yeah, I'm both optimistic and pessimistic. 15 years is not a long time, so I'm hoping that even the most dedicated anti-VM person will not be able to completely decimate things by that stage. If things were allowed a natural evolution progression, that the way things should, it should have an extremely bright future, but things aren't left to the way things should be done or allowed to be done. So, okay. Yeah, I will be 77 by that stage, so I'll be
Sitting here drooling.
well, either that or a hospital bed. Yes.
Geez, that's scary. I'll be 85. It's not that far away.
Sorry, I
But
won't hold
you-
you to the prediction.
But you know something? I'm going to say it from a leadership standpoint, okay? It's very important, the leadership of what the leadership wants to do or supports, like you said, Martin. Now, today, when we had Matt and Frank present, I'm the eternal optimist. I work with a bunch of guys from New York, and they always tell me that I'm the eternal optimist. You're too nice, Len. You're not tough enough, and all that kind of stuff. That's the way I am. I was born in Endicott. I wasn't born in Manhattan. But I felt very good today when what I heard and what I just hope they follow through and do a lot of things that they want to do and said they were going to do. You know, that's really, I think, where it all. So to me, it's hopeful.
And if we keep getting people like Barton's hiring the young guys, the young girls and guys, females and males,
And training them.
and training them,
Yeah.
then yes, very good. So Cameron and that type of approach of increasing the skill base,
And hopefully this
That will work.
VCU thing takes off here.
indeed. Yeah, there's a lot of positive things that could happen.
Right.
If I knew that, I'd be making millions on the stock market, so don't ask me for predictions.
So, leadership was brought up here. Looking back, are there leaders and or mentors that you guys have seen over the years that stand out to you as good role models, good leaders, good mentors? Whether in your personal lives growing up in this technology or just from a community-wide thing,
Maybe at IBM mostly, or it doesn't matter?
Anywhere.
Going back a little bit to that Linux thing that started off, you know, the leaders that were there, Irving Wadowski-Berger was really a very strong proponent of Linux, and of course that helped drive the Linux on ZVM story. Nick D'Onofrio was another really good one. Steve Mills was another very good one. We took them in and around, talking to executives around. Those were a good group of guys, and they worked synergistically together, and they really were very supportive of a lot of things that was really different I was trying to do. And it wasn't too hard to get to them, to be honest with you, especially if they were Wall Street customers, so that helped me quite a bit, reaching them, and because they had a lot of interest with Wall Street customers. It'd be nice to, now, today, one more thing, and I'll give it back to these guys. I think this Arvind is doing a pretty decent job right now. I think he is, first of all, a good Z proponent, and he understands it. You know, I feel that the CEO, I knew Sam, and he was a good guy, but I don't think he wasn't a technical guy. He wasn't a technology person. Arvind is, but he also understands the business, and he's kind of at the right place at the right time for the company right now, in my humble opinion, and I hope it continues in the direction that I feel it's going. I met him a couple of times at Think and everything, and I used to know him when I was at IBM. And I think there's a lot of hope here. And again, hopeful and optimistic feelings in my mind from all that. I hope everybody heard me. I'm talking kind of low, I guess.
Yeah, if you can't hear any of us in the back there, give us a wave, okay? If you can't hear us.
Sorry, Rick.
Seriously, give us a wave. I'm sorry, Barton? You want some more time?
So, back to like what really made a difference with the VM platform, a guy by the name of Dick Butler. So IBM used to have the internal VM tool, and they used to have what they ship, and they were two different things. So Dick Butler says, we're gonna have one product. He made all the internal guys use the stuff that they were shipping. That made a big difference, because all of a sudden, the APAR rate against VM back then was really high, because the internal people weren't even using it. So Dick Butler made a very big
Eat your own dog food,
decision.
right?
Eat your own dog food. So, and I was working for him at the time, and took a big job. It was a big job.
Yeah.
He did it. So
That was a
Good.
good point.
I didn't know about that. That's good.
Neil?
Few people come up to mind, going back to my third grade teacher, my first boss, subsequent bosses, and then colleagues. They all have one quality in common. They understood what you enjoyed doing, encouraged it, gave you opportunities to further it, but also told you to pull your head in when you're getting too cocky or going off the rails.
Right.
And that's lasted to this day. I get to play, don't tell Margaret this, but I get paid for my hobby. And it's great. The third grade teacher saw that I was interested in science, so put things in there for that type of thing. My first boss saw that I was interested in assembler and systems work, so shifted me that way. So if you can find bosses and people like that in your life, grab them. And that, the term networking sounds like you're using somebody, but in reality, it's just getting a wider group of friends who often like to drink with you, which is a bonus.
Yeah.
you ready for that beer?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in the future, maybe wild beers up here. But, so each of you are also Knights of VM. We have Sir Len the Eloquent, Sir Neale the Wizard of Oz, and Sir Barton the Blacksmith, but let's talk about what, not just the knighthood, but what does the community mean to you, and how has it impacted your careers?
Oh, for me, it was very much a part of my career. Just going back to what I said just a moment ago, there isn't almost everybody in this room. I look across the room, almost everybody's been very influential and helpful in one way or another, or we've collaborated on something. I think it made a big difference for helping me a lot, and what my goals were and what I was attempting to do. You know, working with customers is a pretty big challenge, especially today. You know, there's a lot of demands on them.
Yeah, those customers, man.
It's a lot of, they have a lot on their shoulders. They got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
You know, and we're not the only vendor that comes in to talk to them. You know, so, but with the help that I get from these couple of characters here and everybody else, you know, and customers, great customers like Mike, that I'm very lucky to have. It's just been great.
Nice. Barton?
It's a very small, tight community, which is either the good news and the bad news. It'd be nice if the community was a lot larger, and we didn't know everybody.
Keep working on that, yep.
Problem is, if we know everybody, that's the problem.
It's not big enough.
It's not big enough. It's not big enough to survive.
Neil?
Community was everything. Being in Australia, so we were far away from where the action was, but we had a Australian share guide, and we had a lot of members who were running VM VSE, so that was good when I set up a local user group there, and then found VM Share, and through that heap of contacts I knew electronically before I ever met them in person, was able to bring people like Melinda and Jeff Savitt to Australia to talk at Share Guide, Joyce Tomaselli and things like that. So that was all through community contacts. Again, this networking stuff I'm talking about, and I have friends that have survived 30 odd plus years. I mean, just happened to meet Melinda and Lee in London on coincidence, and that's just a lovely thing to happen and to be associated with people like that. But community, yeah, it's everything. VM Share was great when we outgrew that, and I think I miss not being able to go to Share now because I'm living back in Australia. It's rather a large thing, so once or twice a year so I can come to the VM workshop is one of the things I put on my calendar for that sake of community.
Neat. Yeah, so I think it's important. Let's just take a second and look around. When I think about who all is in this room and what you all are capable of, not just in the IT world, there's not a lot of problems we couldn't solve. I mean, beer would help, but there's not a lot of problems we couldn't solve here. So with that, I'm also going to open it up now. If you guys have questions for any of these three guys or all of them, now is your opportunity. I reserve the right to censor some questions or pass them off for later. But don't let that scare you. Mr. Johnson.
For the younger people in the room, what is the best way for them to engage in the community?
Okay.
You know, there's the Marist listserv. Are there other good ways to participate?
Okay. Yeah. So for the recording, the question was for young people, what is your recommended way for engaging and being part of the community? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Well, much as I like listservers, they are probably not a great way of developing community and stuff like that. Maybe the Discord server that started up seems to be getting a large enough group to be self-sustaining, but we've tried Stack Overflow, that failed because it didn't have the oomph. So young people find these local user group opportunities. Hill Gang in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. We need to see more young, new faces at places like that. Listen to the presentations, but hang around for the conversation afterwards. Don't be afraid to ask a question. One of the good things about the VM group, we're not a bunch of dicks. If there's a question that seems odd, we will
Speak for yourself.
Well, maybe after a few drinks, but yeah, we don't tend to jump on people. If you're ever on the IBM main list, boy, that can get toxic. And if you're on Reddit, that can get really toxic. The nice thing about the VM Linux VSE people,
We're all teddy bears.
we're all teddy bears, yeah. And we understand what it's like to not know something and not have not being able to go to a Stack Overflow to find things. So if there's a question that we've encountered 15 times in our life and we get asked it again, I have no problem just giving the same explanation because they'll give that explanation or somebody else. So just don't be afraid.
I got nothing.
But
You know, I think the best thing to do for the new people is go talk to a customer. Go talk to as many as you can. Go ask them what you can maybe help them with. You're gonna probably get asked something you don't even know anything about. But, you know, by doing that, that's how you learn, that's how you get involved. This email stuff, I'm the biggest user of email that you can probably find. But, you know, it's just, nothing beats going and talking to people. And talking to the people, they're the final arbiter. Customer, when I was asked a lot of times to go do a presentation, and I had to go sometimes talk to an IBM audience, I dreaded it because I always found that it was a contest of the minds. You know, they knew more than I did or what have you. That's fine. But I got smarter over time and I said, sure, let's have this one or two of these customers in the room along with all of you so we can kill two birds with one stone. And then they found that they couldn't ask some of the questions that were like trying to stump the speaker in front of those customers because they couldn't say it in front of the customer. And it didn't matter that they couldn't ask that question because it had nothing to do with the price of tea in China. It's the questions that the customers were asking that mattered. And that was a way of teaching the IBMers in the room and the salespeople or the support people and getting the customers to get the help. And the person that usually speaks is the one that usually learns the most. You know, I've been doing this mentoring thing with the Open Mainframe Project recently. You know, every year the Open Mainframe Project does about 12 or dozen or so paid internships, and we usually get applications of people wanting to, be considered for those openings. And this year we got 1,700 for a dozen spots, 1,700 applications worldwide. And it's been going up every year. When it first came out, it was a couple hundred, and after that it went up to 5, and it keeps going up. So again, to summarize, customer's the final arbiter. Get in front of the customer. That's where you learn doing things for the customer, and you'll accomplish your goals much faster. I learned that the hard way in many ways.
Yeah, present. If you get an opportunity to present on something you interests you, you'll study it, you'll learn it, you'll become somewhat expert in it. You'll get up and your first presentation will be clumsy, awkward. You may even get a bit of flop sweat, but when you finish it, you'll get a rush and you'll want to do more presentations. You'll get more expert each time you do it. Right.
You know, the Endicott Briefing Center, when it was alive, I had to do a presentation, my very first one, and then I had the guys in the back of the room that were the vets from the briefing center there. They've since passed away, but they were really good teachers. I'll never forget them. And during my first presentation, I thought I knew everything, and when I got up there, I go, oh, wait a minute, I flopped. I didn't do too good. And I said, well, I guess this hurts my chances of coming back and being a presenter anymore, so thank you, though, for letting me try. Oh, wait a minute, Len, you're coming back tomorrow. Literally, it was tomorrow. And you're gonna do the same presentation to another customer. And I guess they must have told the customer that I was a newbie and everything, so I guess it was all right. All I did that night, I didn't sleep that night. All I did was go home and look over those charts and the script and everything. And when I got up the next day, I must have looked like a zombie because I barely was able to take a shower to get there on time. And I did real well. And he said, okay, you're part of the briefing staff now.
Welcome to the team.
That was it. It was nice.
Yeah, I think, just to echo everything that was said here, also just having a curious mind. I remember, and some people here might remember, I know with some of my teams, if I took them along to visit a customer, part of their homework was, you have to ask at least one question. I don't care what it is,
That's a good idea.
but just to get used to, because some of these guys might remember, when I started like in this capacity, I was shy. I'll give you a second to think about that. I still am in ways, but it was learning to put myself out there, be curious, ask the questions, be willing to look silly at times. Some of the stuff that people told me was okay to do, I probably should have double checked.
Yeah. They set you up.
But that was a great question, Paul. That's maybe something we should cover in a different session somewhere of like, I don't know that everybody knows about the Discord server and some of the other stuff that's out there. That'd be good to put together sometime. But great question. Other questions? Lauren has a question. What?
No, I
Oh.
was just gonna say, Ariel Milberg has a Where to Find the Best CDM
Oh.
information session tomorrow, so.
That's right.
Who? I'm sorry?
Ariel has a great session tomorrow about where to find the best information about ZBM.
Oh, very good.
I'll give you a chance to.
I do
update
remember
the schedule.
seeing that on the agenda. Now, say it, Lauren.
Other questions for our panel? Yes.
When I talked to people about how they got their first position that either led to them working on the mainframe or on the mainframe, it seems like a lot of us kind of came from almost random places. Like I was a deckhand, and luck kind of looks like it's a big part of it. And on my way home yesterday, my Lyft driver asked me how he could get his foot in the door. And really, the only thing I could think to tell him was to find an operations office, because that was what my entry point was. Would any of you have advice on how to make it a little less about luck?
Yeah, so the question for the recording is, we sometimes just find ourselves in these positions, whether it be like luck, but what are some good ways to get a foot in the door in this space? I mean, we talked about internships for the Open Mainframe project, right? That's kind of a way. Actually, I can recall somebody that had done that, then presented the results and got a job offer at that event.
Yes, I don't see him in here.
I was looking to,
Robert, yeah.
there,
There's the man.
I believe you did.
You and Steve, right? Yeah.
For me, say, yes, I do work.
I was lucky. There was a person who set up the cadetship where I ended up, was a visionary. My dad happened to find an ad in the newspaper and cut it out for what was called the Totalised Adorations Board, or TAB, which is an off-track betting organisation in the state of New South Wales. Just how coincidentally, my father was a great funder of that operation. But he cut out the ad, and I thought, oh, I'll give it a go. I want to do IT. I don't know, I thought about just going straight through university and coming out and looking for a job there. But this happened to be 2 years part-time paid, 2 years full-time paid to get your degree and work in the place and work at every part of the organisation. So you weren't always in IT. You went to the operations centre. You did that. This guy, the Alan Windross, who'd end up being the general manager, was his scheme, and it was genius. And it went from about 1976 to 2000 and something, and the number of years employees stayed compared to what the usual market for IT people are. You know, every 3 years you're cycling through jobs. I was there for 18 years because they had a culture that I really liked, and it was all because the management consciously went through that effort, and I don't see that type of effort anymore there. So I haven't not a great advice for you, unfortunately, unless you can turn back time.
Turn back time, got it.
You know, have you heard of anything called these user groups or Z councils or anything like that at all? Okay. Those are, I run some
Hill
this
Gang?
guy, Hill Gang, some with this guy, some with the other guy, gals,
Yeah, if you,
and the MUA.
there's no
Those are-
membership
those are-
required.
There's good places to go.
Just come along,
Yeah.
listen to the thing,
Those are
and
good
then
places
talk to
for
people.
people to go.
Yeah, it's an excellent
Get
small
some
groups.
snacks too,
Yeah.
What's the cost of coming here as a student?
$10.
$10. And what does that include? Meals, drinks, and education, and talking to a lot of people in the business.
Great networking.
Great value.
Was there a question in the back?
Brian?
No, it's gonna be a comment. You talk about getting into it, this kind of an area. Don't forget, there's always, you can go to companies like IBM, you can go to Broadcom, you can go to all the big companies, and they're doing all this training, and they're trying to bring in that next group. And not just seat them in the company, but in other companies like Citibank or a Chase or someone like that, who are looking for help. So that's a great way that you can get involved and you can go, get your feet wet in all different areas.
Yeah, there are a number, both IBM and some other companies that are providing some free education and different things at that level, so that you get some exposure to it. And I'm not a big badge person, but you get the badge, you start getting noticed that way. I think things work. Any other questions out there before we go to the next segment?
Sounds almost.
All right, so next segment is the lightning round, or maybe more like thunder round with you all. So quick questions I'll ask you, and you give me a short answer.
Oh, why you keep looking at me?
The name Linux One, love it or leave it?
Love it.
Love it.
Yeah,
All right.
that was me at first.
ZVM or ZVM?
Z.
Yes.
Yes.
Depending what country I'm in.
Okay. Oh, this is a good one. You can have a couple sentences for this. What's the worst advice you've ever been given? You don't have to tell me who gave it to you. And it doesn't have to be advice you took.
Cross-train.
Cross-train, okay.
That's bad advice.
Have you thought about being a ZOS system
Wait, what?
programmer?
There was a point in time at IBM where they wanted everyone to cross-train and not specialize.
I see.
And
That's
because
why
I
you master
specialized,
of none.
because I specialized and said, bad advice, I changed my life and my career
Yeah.
and got ahead really fast.
Any bad advice?
I'm trying to think.
Okay, I can come back to you.
Yeah.
Okay, here's an easy one. We'll start over with Neil. First concert.
Dave Brubeck, 1973, Sydney Opera House. My uncle was a fan of jazz, took us along. That was the first thing. It was great.
Fine.
The guy that sang Big Brass Bed, I can't even remember his name, but Oakland Coliseum.
Okay, nice.
Grand Funk Railroad, 1969.
Nice.
Where?
Okay.
Endicott, New York, at the arena. Now it's called Visions Arena, Visions Credit Union Arena.
All right, this is a trickier one.
And I saw him 35 years later in New Jersey at a balloon fest, and I got a chance to meet him and talk to him.
Did they remember you?
No, I didn't.
His haircut had changed.
I left myself open for that one.
Is there technology that you weren't sure of at first and you changed your mind and found it worthy of embracing? That's a tough one, isn't it? Anything?
I suppose I was skeptical at smartphones at first.
Okay,
They seemed
what's the point? Yeah, I got a plain, perfectly good phone already. Okay.
Good question.
Oh, here's another one.
Makes me think.
This one will be good. Do you have a prize collectible from your career?
It's hard because I'm a hoarder, so everything's a prize collection.
I think I got 1,200 pins from conferences.
Wow.
I do have about the first 4 pages of that SVC trace. I kept it as a souvenir. VM 370 Rel 5 PLC 2.
Yeah, I'm gonna have follow-up questions on that. Okay, Glenn.
This is gonna sound kind of stupid, but I was going through my desk at home and I found at the bottom of the desk my original yellow card. And,
You mean your green card?
no. No, it was yellow.
It happened to be yellow.
Yeah, mine was yellow. And I know, and then I was looking at it, I wasn't that interested in it, but then all of a sudden, I saw some chicken scratch on it, of something I noted next to the thing that explained the CCW.
Okay.
And I got a magnifying glass, I couldn't read it, and I'm still trying to figure out what that says, what I was trying to tell myself in that note. Because it looked pretty worn, I must have been using that part of the card a lot for some reason or other.
I still have the box of books too, from 1977.
Really? All right, so my follow-up question is, how many times have you moved that stuff each time?
It's moved continents. Australia to the US, US back to Australia. My wife's curses me still.
All right, gotta rub it in there. All right, let's see what else we have here. Do you have any regrets about being on this panel?
I think it's cutting into my drinking time.
Well,
I didn't know what
Yeah.
the questions were to expect. This has actually been kind of fun.
flipping it around, best advice you've ever been given?
My grandfather and father said, get a job at IBM.
Taking that ad that Dad cut out of the newspaper.
Yeah. Yes? Pressure's on Barton.
Use your time wisely.
That's a good one. All right. See, one more lightning thing. What do we have here? First VM command that comes to mind. Go. Well, I didn't think that was. Okay, so we got 3 shutdowns.
iSpace CMS.
All right. Let's wrap things up. So I'll give you each a chance here to share. Is there some advice you want to give the world, especially younger folks, or advice you would give the 22-year-old version of you, or just something that you want to leave the community knowing? Again, a
I'll
4-minute limit.
Before that.
No, yeah, before that.
All right, but it might be quick. Make sure that you, because I wish I did it now, understand the technology as best as you can, because it does make you more powerful when you're in front of the customer. I always wish I get a little bit more in depth on things. When I was, in the lab, I didn't realize, not until now, at this point in my life, how much I had at my disposal to really understand it better. I always was trying to go on to the next thing and not really concentrate on, maybe understanding the programming better and some of the technology better. I wish I could go back there and do that a little bit better. But I'll tell you, when I got out into the fields, because I did one of those things where I went out as a, that back to the field movement from out of the labs that they had back those days. I did find myself that when I was, I wouldn't say up against, but alongside of my brethren IBM salespeople at that time, that I was more valuable, much more than I thought I'd be, because I did have some good technology. The sales guys at those days were more really truly salesy kind of people, and they couldn't get into they would a customer, I'd be in front with them, with the customer, and they would say, oh, we'll get back. I said, oh, no, I know the answer to that. And they, how do you know the answer to that? Because it almost was kind of making them not look too good. And, because I was one of them, yeah, like Mr. Know-it-all. And I said, no, I really don't, let me answer. But I wish I did more. I would say, understand this technology, you're never gonna know it all, especially today, there's just constant fire hose, but try to do as much as you can, take advantage of all, like I do, all these people in here. And they're all very good about wanting to help you, they always are.
Forget about Java, forget about that easy stuff, because what do universities teach today? If you learn Java and you think you're really good, guess what? I can hire 1,000 Java programmers tomorrow for 10% the cost in India. I get ads every single day for Java programmers. Don't learn Java, it's just not worth it. I mean, learn systems, learn something that's actually not very many people learn. I mean, VM is really good because not very many people. When I interview kids, and I know I'm not supposed to call them kids, James, but when I tell them, look, you learn this stuff, you can find a job easy. I mean, go to any conference, say, I know VM programming, I need a job. You're gonna find one, right?
Yeah, find a niche.
Okay, you know Java, I need a job. Yeah, so what, right? So, I know Python, so what? So, sorry, but that is, I mean, all the kids know Python. I mean, I can hire Python programmers, damn it doesn't.
I know COBOL.
Yeah,
COBOLs are really, yeah.
And PO1.
Even understanding the shutdown command is really good. Yep.
That's why I wrote an answer. It puts a splash screen, saying which system you're trying to shut down. Are you sure you want to do it?
Neil,
Three options. Find something you really like doing, and it's the old cliche, if you find something you like doing, it's never work. But that doesn't always work. Jobs change and that type of thing. If you find yourself in a job you don't like, bear with it for the sake of your family, but just remember, don't go overboard, because the people you're working for will replace you in a heartbeat when you leave. They won't even miss you going. So don't get over sentimental about places. And thirdly, whatever you do, take vacations with your families, 1 or 2 days, whatever, because if you've seen out the front desk there, there's 2 kids out there, grandchildren, and I've been in the same industry 43 years. I didn't think I'd be coming to a conference with my grandchildren, that type of thing. So take vacations, 1 or 2 days. You'll love it. There'll be better memories than your work experiences.
Do we have to fly as far as you do?
Depends what you're smoking.
well, if you don't join me in thanking our panel up here, I thought it was a great session. Great job.
Yeah.